Welcome to Crown and Connections. This is Rob Clemons in sunny Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It is the fall time, headed to the winter time, actually. And so it's a great time for us business owners to be thinking about how we can get ready for 2023. The end of the year is coming. We've been looking at our budgets, we've been looking at our planning, maybe looking at a little employee motivation leading into the beginning of the year. And so I'm really blessed today to have somebody that can come in and talk a little bit about range of things from retirement plans and all that good stuff. So Jason Grantz from Integrated Pension Services is with us. He's the managing director. Jason, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you setting this up and bringing me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, one of the things that got me excited about you today is I see that you dabble a little in sales and marketing. And that's always going to be something that, anybody who's in business knows, that's a key to the greatness of getting a company going. Tell me a little bit about your background, man. How'd you get to the spot you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. When I finished, I actually been doing this for almost 30 years now. I know, don't let my bald head and my graying beard fool you. It's been doing this for a while, and so I live in I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and I live in New Jersey, and I was a son of a working blue collar father and a white collar mother, and middle class, just normal
Yeah.
upbringing. And I went to Rutgers University, and when I finished in the mid '90s, I was looking around for a job. I had an economics degree, and I think Rutgers did a great job of educating me, but I don't know that I took full advantage of their job services or their career development area when I was there.
And
So,
let's stop there. Because I have college students who listen to the show and they're like, "Hey,
yep.
how do I get to the next level?" Tell me about your Rutgers experience. Were you the party guy? Were you the extracurriculars guy? I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
I was all that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Gotcha.
I had a good time. I had a nice time in college. I did well in school, and I also, I played sports,
Mhm.
intramural, and had a good community of friends, and a lot and a very nice time. Yeah, and I partied a little bit like everybody does when they're in that
Right.
in that
Got
age
to.
group. But um, at where I went, I had an economics degree. I went to class. I didn't really take that extra step of saying, okay, let what do I do after this?
Mhm.
I hadn't given during that point in your life when you're in your early 20s, didn't really give it that much thought. I just sort of said, all right, well, you go to high school, then you go to college, and then you get a job. And I didn't really think, all right, mechanics of how to do that. And this is pre-internet. This is
Yeah.
1990. I didn't get my first email address till 96. So,
You're right.
I
Okay.
graduated in 95. So it was
Sure. Sure. Sure.
it was a different time back then. So I did what a lot of people do is I leveraged my network.
Mhm.
I started calling, friends, family. Some of them were older than me. They had jobs already. One of them happened to have a wife that was managing a call center of all things. Remember when those happened, right? When we had
Yeah.
call centers. And
Been a minute.
it was an 800 number. It was based in East Brunswick, New Jersey, which is like central New Jersey, right very close by to Rutgers,
Mhm.
and it happened to be a call center for individual employees who were participants in, this is going to be a technical term, 457B plans,
Ooh.
which are basically governmental versions of 401k plans.
Mhm.
And so the clients they had were like, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, state of New Jersey, state of New York, city of Philadelphia, for example.
Mhm.
Um, and it was an entry level job, and so she got me on, and um, they got me my licensing. I spent the first 15 months of my career working there, and so I got a little experience, and then met some people who invited me to the next gig, which happened to be a mutual fund company up in New York City area. And they needed somebody in their retirement plan operations group, so I did that for a few years and worked my way up the corporate ladder there. Eventually, I made it onto the internal 401k sales desk and started managing a team of internal salespeople. And eventually, I made it out and became a field what they call wholesalers, retirement plan wholesaler, which everyone in my world has asked me, what does a retirement plan wholesaler do? And when I tell them, they're like, I don't understand. So, um,
We don't know what she said, but okay, gotcha.
yeah, that's it. So it's a good job. Yeah, yes, it's a good job.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did that for a while, and I actually met my business partner, Will Hackler,
Mhm.
while I was in that next 15-year period. So in the right around 2009 or 10 is when we met, and he became a good client of mine. He was running he was in the beginning process of starting to take over his father's business.
Hmm.
Our company, Integrated Pension Services, is, we're a 40-year-old legacy full service retirement plan consulting, compliance, and advisory firm. We do
Yeah.
everything, but we only do retirement plans. And
Mm.
so Bill Hackler founded the company in the 1980s and brought Will in the late 90s. And some in the early 2010 area, he started to begin the process of taking over for his dad who wanted to retire. And became a client of mine at my firm that I was working at that point. And flash forward to now, he was my client for about 10 or 12 years. And then when my firm got acquired by a private equity firm, and I was sort of thinking, or what do I want to do with the now I'm 2/3 through the career process. I got the back third. What am I going to do with this?
Hmm.
He said, I'm busting at the seams. I need some help. Can you come in? And I said, absolutely. Here's what I need. And um, brought me in as a partner in the company and put me in charge of growing our top line revenue. So
Wow.
that was sort of the path on how I got here from
That's a
call.
cool path, man. I mean, like, and one thing that I love when I talk to people who are in business leadership positions is I think that there's college students right now who are figuring out what they're going to do, and the era is a little different maybe for everybody. I think you came from an era similar to when I was, and I was just a little bit after you there. But it's you go to college, for 4 years, you graduate, you go get your job, and then you go do that thing, and that's what you're told to do. And I think it's evolved a little over time, but ultimately what I found a lot of times was that student who they didn't have it all figured out. They didn't get to the senior year and they're like, well, I know what job I'm going to and what company. And I find that more people are not that. They're still trying to figure out what they're going to do maybe midway through their senior year, but that opportunity comes, and you mentioned your opportunity there, and it leads into one thing to the next. So
Yeah.
that's a cool progression. Um, what is your favorite? And I'm going to go off the cuff a little bit here, and we'll get back to integrated pension services because I'd love to hear
Yeah.
more about what you do. What's your favorite Wall Street or investing movie out there? And I'm going to go ahead and throw out a couple of examples. Boiler Room. Is this a movie that you would say, yeah, that's true?
What if I told you in those early days of my career, I worked alongside a lot of guys who came out of that exact boiler room?
Is that?
Uh,
Are you serious? Oh,
yes,
I
I'm
mean,
dead
that'd be a great
serious.
story.
Yeah. All those boiler rooms and, from that movie, for those of you who don't know, Boiler Room and Wolf of Wall Street they both came out of the same book.
Okay.
They were the same story, but told different ways.
Well, now,
So
first of all, I did not know that. I love both of those movies, so this is great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But the Boiler Room movie came first, and you know, all of those shops, they used to call them, we referred to them as chop shops.
Mm,
They were all out on Long Island in New York, and I live in central New Jersey, so I mean, I can get to Long Island if I get my car. I'll be there in 45 minutes, so I'm pretty
right.
nearby. When I went to go work for the large mutual fund company, and that company was called Alliance Capital. Then they became Alliance Bernstein. Now they go by AB Funds. I was there from 97 to '05.
Hmm.
And so that movie came out in like 98 or 99, give or
Yeah.
take. Maybe it was slightly
It
after.
was somewhere late 90s, I want to
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Um, a lot of the internal sales wholesalers,
Mm,
these were guys that were in they were young parts of their career. They were in their mid 20s. They were aggressive. They had to be aggressive because it was a phone-based approach to growing the business.
mm,
And the manager who ran the desk at that point in time, this is right around 2009, 2000, 2001. Um, he recruited out of those shops because he wanted people who weren't afraid of the telephone.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have found now that I'll pause there and maybe divert a little myself. I have found in my career that I've trained a lot of internal salespeople. I've trained a lot of salespeople,
Hmm.
and I've watched some of my former people who worked for me that I trained up and mentored. I've watched them grow and exceed and fly past me in their business success. And some of them are my clients today.
Yeah.
We actually do business together now.
Yeah.
And one of the very first things that I look for when I'm talking with somebody for potentially joining our firm is what's their vocal presence? What's their phone presence? Are they able to actually communicate effectively orally?
Hmm.
Because it's a lost skill. It's natural for it. You're an extroverted personality. I could tell that from talking
Hmm.
to you. I am as well.
Yeah.
Um, for us, it's natural. Conversation is natural. We could probably, gab at each other for the next 3 hours and never get bored.
And by the
But
way, for the viewers, don't worry, we're not going to do that. It'll be a little shorter than that, but it's still going to be great. Yeah.
for example, my wife and son, they're introverted, and far and deep introverts. So for them,
Mhm.
conversation is not, it's a strain. It takes energy.
Sure.
And so these are the things that we look for. And so when I was on that desk, um, that was one of the things that manager wanted, was he wanted people who wouldn't be afraid of the telephone.
Mhm.
And he found that there was a large amount of these people coming out of those places because they were ending at that point,
Mhm.
and they were good candidates for calling on financial advisors, which is what we did back then. So
Yeah. Yeah, one of the cool things that I think of when I hear you talk about that, and maybe we can talk a little bit about reality. Not reality, because that was in reality, but I'm talking about like today. Building a
sure,
quality business. So I do want to get into that, but I see an interesting thing you're talking about there. It's like you have these talented people, and that's what I thought when I see these movies. Young Vin Diesel here. Like the but ability to talk to people, right? But they just got the wrong guidance. They got guidance that told them, hey, let's go down this path and to
sure.
do things and to try to take people for what they are versus giving them the right guidance. And that's part of what this show is about, great leadership. But tell me about like what the reality of what you see in proper investing versus what that was, which is manufacturing hope in people, where this is about quality decision making.
Yeah. So in my world, because we focus on retirement plans, we really are. We're dealing a lot of times with two different personality types. We're dealing with business owners who
Hmm.
are making decisions about how to structure their corporate retirement plan, whether that's a 401k plan or a
Hmm.
traditional pension plan or something else. And then we're actually dealing with their employees. And those employees can come from all walks of life. You get blue collar, white collar, people who make a lot of money, people who don't make enough money. And our job as consultants in this business, we view our role as, first and foremost, the business we're in is the relationship business.
Hmm.
We need to make sure we understand what all of our relationships need to be successful, and so we can feed them properly, and make sure that we're giving people everything that they need in order to have their version of success, which differs from person to person.
Hmm.
We take the approach, of being fiduciary in nature, meaning, if you wanted the most lay definition of that word for your audience, a fiduciary is somebody who puts someone else's interests in front of their own.
Hmm.
And that could, like, for example, a good way to think about that is a parent could have a paternal relationship with their child is fiduciary in nature because they're putting their child's interest in front of their own.
Yeah,
The
that's a
doc,
good way
the
to put
the
it. Yeah.
the doctor patient experience, similar kind of a thing. So we always ask ourselves as we're going through our process, whether that's on the plan design side for the retirement plan, or whether it's actually with the investments that we're populating these retirement plans with, that individuals can choose. If we look at all the different personality types and all the different time horizons and all the different, um, risk characteristics and tolerances that exist out there, you've got do-it-yourselfers, you've got people who want you to do it for them. You got, in those two categories, you have conservative, moderate, and aggressive. You have
Hmm.
people who have 40 years to go and people who have 4 years to go, and everywhere in between. You have to populate these plans with a wider array, a broader array of choices that can fit all the different needs. And then do it in a way where, um, there's a minimum quality standard that's adhered to on day one and is then reviewed and monitored going forward. And when replacements are needed, that they're proactively done, that they're not just, we just don't just set it and forget it. We're actually
Yeah.
reviewing these things, and that our advice and guidance does not, have any conflicts of interest built into it. Where
Yeah.
when we choose investments or when we recommend things, that it's not going to be because it's going to make us more money. And that's been an industry change, a retirement plan
Mhm.
industry change that's really evolved in the last, 2 decades and really accelerated in the last 10 years.
Well, so I want to go back to yourself personally then, because
Yep.
what you're saying speaks to me. And by the way, full disclosure, we're loyal customers of Integrated Pension Services at Monarch. We use you guys for our 401k services and done a very, very nice job for anybody who's looking for this type of professional help. One of the questions I have for you is personally, what would you quantify yourself as between on the level of riskiness with your investments? Do you prefer to go more risky personally, or are you more like cautious and conservative?
Um, I would say that when I invest, I tend to be a little bit more on the aggressive side,
Hmm.
but I also don't fully invest. So what I mean is, I make sure that our insurance needs, I make sure that our emergency savings fund, I make sure that all the things that are there in the event that things go horribly sideways or
Hmm.
the wrong way, that are all of those things are taken care of first, and then with the extra, that's where I invest. And when I do invest, I invest aggressively because, candidly, I still have another 2 decades of investing to go, and time is a friend when it comes to investing, and so I'm a long term investor, and over long periods of times it pays off to invest
Yeah.
aggressively in my
Well,
experience.
I mean, that's a great tip, and that's something that people need to know. I mean, we're at a part of the market, and I'd love you to speak to this, where somebody and again, we have to look at age ranges, right? If
Sure.
you're 22 versus 42 versus 62, you're going to have different mindsets on what you should be doing right now. For the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to focus down to something different, though. I'm going to talk about the fact that the market lately has been down a little bit,
Oh
and
yeah.
I may be sugarcoating a little, but it's been down a little, and people are starting to look and go, do I want to put money in my 401k right now? I've always been the guy who I'm like, well, man, it's down. I'm getting a better dollar per unit
Sure.
right now. Give it to me. But what do you say to those people who are getting a little nervous right now?
Yeah, so I mean the shorter glib sort of answer is, well, the market's on sale, right? So when
Mhm.
things are on sale, what do? You buy them when they're on sale.
Yeah.
But the longer answer is this, we've done some homework on this, and I authored a paper about 10 or 12 years ago with somebody who's much smarter at doing math than I am. And we quantified, the value of the components that go into a successful retirement. And
Mhm.
and the idea is, when someone is in their mid to late 60s or early 70s, they're going to stop working, and they're going to have to replace their paycheck somehow.
Mhm.
And Social Security is going to give you some of that, and personal savings will give you some of that. Um, but think about it this way, you're for most people, their retirement years is twice as long as their childhood.
Yeah.
But when they were children, they had parents that funded it. Who's funding the retirement? They have to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So when we looked at all those factors, savings rate was by far and away. We're talking, depending on, it really didn't even matter whether you were 22 or 70. Savings rate is the most powerful component to a successful retirement. You can't earn off of money that you didn't save. You can only earn off of what you did.
Mhm.
And it's worth roughly three out of every $4 in retirement.
Okay.
Um, And so what we try and do is when people call in, and they're nervous about the market, they're nervous about investing, we say we can work through with you what's to figure out what's going to be the most appropriate investing mix for you when it comes to, should you be in a target date fund, or should you be in the stable value fund, or some combination of some of the other funds in the plan, as long as you don't stop saving,
Mhm.
because the saving is the most powerful piece of that. And so we just make sure that we cover that base first. That I understand all your anxiety and all your nerves, and where you are, because we feel them too. It's an emotional process. When
Yeah.
markets go down, they go down aggressively, they go down volatilely, with high volatility, and it's unpleasant. It's scary.
Mhm.
But the savings part, the saving on a regular basis and automating savings, is incredibly powerful. And then without it, we're going to have more people failing than succeeding when it comes to being able to have income replacement at retirement. And that leads to elderly poverty, which is, frankly, I'm a champion to fight against elderly poverty. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And so that's what I tell people when they call me and they're nervous about this stuff.
Has it changed over? I mean, you've had a pretty long career now in this business. Has the way that people have talked about retirement changed in recent years? And here's an example. I think if you could go back to let's say the 50s or somewhere back there, I think everybody's talking about, well, I'm going to retire at 63 or 64, and that's probably the way it was. And through a number of years, I feel like nowadays, people are probably my suspicion would be that people are planning on retiring later. But is that correct? Is that what you're seeing, or are you seeing more people trying to retire earlier?
I think everybody has a dream of retiring earlier, and
Yeah,
unless they're doing what they love.
yeah,
And then you're not really working. You're just doing what you
yeah,
love.
yeah.
Um, but the reality is that life expectancies have gotten much broader. When Social
Right.
Security was new, your life expectancy was before Social Security kicked in. So, they now life expectancy is usually 15, 20 years beyond when
Hmm.
people start taking Social Security. So, working longer is just a necessary fact. I mean,
Yeah.
mathematically, it just doesn't work for a lot of people to retire as early as they used to, several decades ago. So yeah, we're seeing people but normal retirement is still occurring for most people, in the mid to late 60s and early
Okay.
70s. Um, that is what we're seeing. But what we're working on now, what we're trying to help people with now as the industry evolves, and this is everybody, record keepers and firms like mine, is we're starting to try and work out the best ways to start to unwind what they've saved in their 401k, what they've saved in their IRA, what they've saved in personal savings, and try and find the best way to optimally spend money and sustain themselves. Because and it's not linear. And this is actually important for a lot of people to understand. When they retire, it's not like, oh, I stopped working, I'm just going to sit on my couch and watch
Mhm.
TV, and that's not what happens. What ends up happening for most people is those first several years after they retire, they start doing all the stuff that they put off. They
Yeah.
start going on trips and going to visit family, and I've never been to Paris, I'm going to Paris, whatever. And so they call those years the go-go years. And
Hmm.
and then what ends up happening is slowly that extra spend that happens in those first years after you retire, starts to get taken over. You start spending a little more money on healthcare. You're starting to you're starting so then the next several years are what's called the slow go years, where the
Okay.
spend starts to decline a little bit compared to those first few, because you can't travel as much.
Yeah.
You just can't do it as much. Your physicality doesn't let you do it. So maybe family comes to visit you instead of you visit family. um, and then when you eventually happens, you get to your no-go years, where you really are just, you maybe are starting to look at potentially moving into an assisted living facility or something similar, or you're just not going anywhere. You're still, going to the club and playing cards with your friends, but you're not
Hmm.
really, your days of traveling abroad and stuff are coming to an end. So, spending in retirement is not linear. And, that's something that, technique wise, the industry is starting to develop the best and optimal ways to help people through that,
Yeah.
on that non-straight line.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have to, you guys know the things that most people don't yet. Most people are thinking like you said, straight line, and you talk about some great stuff there. From the go-go years to the no-go years. That's really interesting. So, um, for yourself, seeing what you've seen either on the individual level or on the business level, what are the some common mistakes that people make when it comes to retirement plans, or other than not having them at all? What are some mistakes you've seen out there?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first one is they don't save enough.
Mhm.
So, and part of that is something we can fight with plan design. So, we try and encourage people to save, behavior. We've done a lot of studying in behavioral finance where we think about things like inertia and procrastination and choice overload, which is, if given too many choices, people lock up and they don't make
Right.
any choice, or too few choices and they choose everything. So we used to do this. We had some studies that showed that if you offered people under 7 investments in a retirement plan, the vast majority of people would choose all of the investments equally. So if you
Wow.
offered your employees 4 choices, you'd have everybody in the plan 25, 25, 25, 25.
Hmm.
And, and that stops after 7.
Right.
After 7, then they can't do the math anymore, so they don't do it, honestly. And I'm joking a little bit, but
Yeah.
they really don't. Math gets a little complex, and people are like, just tell me what. So the first thing is they don't save enough. So what we try and do is we've tried to implement things like automatic enrollment, where we automatically put everyone who's eligible for a plan into the plan,
Mhm.
and then they have to say, no, I don't want that. So, in same choice, do do I join my 401k plan? The the difference is how we frame that decision. You either choose to fill out a form and join, or the form's already been pre-filled for you and you're in, unless you say no, don't do that. So
Right.
opt in versus opt out. Automatic progressive savings escalators, another popular technique that we've used, where on their anniversary you bump someone who's deferring at 4%, you bump them up to 5
Okay.
automatically. And
Yeah.
so those are techniques that we've used. Um, and putting in a match for as an employer is a great way to encourage people to join the 401k plan. So, if you put that match in place, um, you're basically saying to people, there's a free return here for you. There's the guaranteed return. The return, if you put your money in, is the employer is going to put some money in for you. You don't put your
Hmm.
money in, you don't get that return. So it actually really helps in times like this when the market's not giving any return. That match is still happening, and that so there's people are still getting a higher savings component to their retirement plan. So savings rate's the number one thing. Um, the number two thing is that they get nervous and they take themselves out of the market at exactly the wrong time, and then they don't get back in when they should.
Hmm.
And so, because market timing, in my experience, never works. You have to be 100% right in order for it to work. So we saw this a lot in 2008 and 9, when the last time we had a market that was rough like this one, where in March of 2009, there was roughly 25 or 30% of all of the retirement plan assets in the entire ecosystem left the stock market and went into cash.
Now, how many
And
percent did you just say?
it was like 30%. It was a pretty
Wow,
high number.
30% and went into cash.
Went
Wow,
into
that's rough.
cash,
Okay.
and it sat there for the next 12 months. And what happened between March of '09 and March 2010 is the market rebounded almost a full
Yeah,
100%, and people had all their money on the side during that period of time. And that's not, you can never make that back when
hmm,
you do that to yourself. So you hurt yourself in that process. That's a return you can never get back. So, and then a lot of those people started coming back in because they were like, oh, the market. Now, of course, the market did go up pretty straight from 2010 until 2021. It was a pretty, there were some dips here and
sure.
there, but it mostly went up for that entire period of time. So people in the end probably did okay. But yeah, those are the two big ones. Not saving enough is definitely my top of my list. Long space down, hurting themselves with market timing decisions that maybe aren't the right idea with your retirement money.
I love those tips. Which president should we be thanking for that great? I'm joking. I know, because
You
they
didn't
all
tell
take
me we were
credit for
talking
it.
about politics. I'm not sure.
I
Not
don't even
sure
want to
we would
get
do
on
that.
that. Yeah. Hey, so from your perspective, um, let's talk about integrated pension services. What do you guys do? What do you recommend to the business owner who's out there thinking about dollars and cents? And let's face it, you're a
Yeah.
business owner, you got a bunch of expenses out there. You guys come with a proposition, give your employees 401k, and with a business owner, and auto enroll them and things like that, and match, and the business owners are going, yeah, that sounds great. That's going to cost me how much money now?
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow, right? So how do you have that discussion to make that make sense to a business owner?
Well, the first and foremost, when we sit down with a business owner, we like anybody would sit down with any customer in any business. The first questions you ask is, what are we trying to accomplish here?
Mhm.
What are the needs? What is, and then once we understand what the goal is going to be, so start consulting immediately, right? And this is even before we get hired. Sometimes we're starting to
Mhm.
consult, and I learned that early on in my career that if we want to be different than everybody else, we just start working with people as if they were our client even before they've hired us.
Smart.
So, so we ask the questions, we try and find out what the goals are, we try and find out what the hurdles are. And when it comes down to the cost hurdle, right? So there's a discussion of what are the gross expenses that are going to come out of the business, and then what are the net expenses of that, because some of that is tax deductible, and some of that could be, there's even some pretty heavy incentives, as with from the Secure Act in 2019 for
Mhm.
new plan formation that are not just tax deductions, but are actually tax credits.
Mhm.
So you have a startup plan credit, and a lot of times, because we're a national firm, even though we're regionally East Coast, we do business in probably 30-35 states right now. Some of the states we're in, California, New Jersey, Illinois, Oregon, for example, and and there are others, require employers now of certain sizes to have a workplace retirement plan of some type or another. Um, or if in failing that, they're required to make sure that those employees are automatically enrolled in the state program.
Are you actively lobbying for this? This sounds like a good thing for you, right? You're
It's
like,
been great for us. And the
yeah.
state-run mandates, I mean, that's been, yeah, I was just out at a conference earlier this week, and one of our good friends in the business are California based, and they had their best year they've ever had
Yeah.
because the California mandate is 5 employee companies or larger have to put a plan in place or use a state option, and nobody wants to use a state option. So
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
so a lot of times we're just really sitting down and doing more of a cost analysis
Yeah.
than trying to overcome the hurdle of how much expense it's going to be. But there's also techniques we have in plan design that allow us to sort of make it good for the employer in terms of how much they can get away for themselves individually,
Yeah.
and while at the same time provide a compelling and competitive benefit for the employees to help attract and retain employees, which is really the purpose of these benefits from an employer perspective, is
Mhm.
putting something in place that's going to help bring good employees in and keep your good employees happy and incentivized to work hard.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that was the decision maker for us. We ultimately want to give, look, I believe, especially as we get into this new era that we're in, that it is hard to keep people for the long term. And if you're a business, you need to be thinking about how do I make myself attractive to retain talent for the long term? And we know that retain talent is smarter typically. They know your systems better. You don't have to retrain them. It saves you money like that.
Yep.
But how do you do it if they can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, which in this case is, that you can maybe retire there one day. And you said something a minute ago I really loved. You said you start treating people like clients before they're your clients. We're giving them that level of care. I like to treat my employees like they're going to retire with us, even though I know that they probably statistically won't. I love the idea of treating them that well that I hope that they could. You know what I mean?
I absolutely know what you mean. I mean, well, we look at our employees as our first customer.
Yeah.
I mean, we value our employees and we support them, and we're constantly, you know, querying them to find out what they're enjoying about working for us and what they need that we don't that we're failing at, because self-improvement is part of our from a management perspective, part of our management strategy is to make sure we're constantly improving the way we're doing business internally and externally, because the employees are integrated pension.
Jason, how do you do that though? I mean, what like how do you get actual feedback from your employees? Because I know as a manager, I know a lot of times you go into managers and to your employees and you say, "Oh, how's it going?" "Oh, it's going great. It's going great." You don't really get the feedback. What have you guys done to get feedback from your employees?
Well, we've done all that. I mean, you still have the one-on-one conversations, and
Yeah.
you have we have a group think that we put together, and we also create a lot of subcommittees in our company that to work on specific individual projects. But we also do blind surveying. I mean, we
Mm.
will go out and get and you can find these online, pretty, pretty easily. Just, and just ask them, and just basically say, look, fill this out. Don't put your name on it. We just want to hear back, what you think, what we need, where we're failing, and we tell them up front when we do that, like our purpose for sending this out to you is to find out how we can do our jobs as owners and managers better, you know,
Mm.
and and we tell them in the front of it, be direct, don't beat around the bush. Please
Yeah.
tell us
Yeah.
the unvarnished truth, because um, it doesn't do any good for employees, for us to hear feedback that's just shining us on if it's not, you know if it's not real. So
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing where you got something in your teeth or something, and people are trying to be nice. They don't want to tell you about it, and you're like, man, you're doing me a favor if you tell me there's something in my teeth today. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
That's kind of what I'm
we're
using an
pretty
analogy here.
we're pretty lucky too. I mean, we have good relationships, I feel like, with our staff, and of course, a lot of us. I'm talking to you from New Jersey. We're actually in now. I think we just did the math. We're hired somebody. We're now in 9 states: North and South Carolina, New Jersey, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Illinois, Iowa, and I think we just the person we're hiring is in New York. So that's 9 states.
Wow.
But that's a lot. That's a predominantly northeastern group,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
us folks up here in the Northeast don't pull punches. So
I guess that's not a challenge there, right?
no,
Down
hasn't
here,
been so
everybody
far.
Yeah, down in the southern region here, we start every conversation, every hard conversation with, you're great. I just love you, but it's
Call
like
that
that. You know what I
the
mean?
dance of the butterflies, right?
Yeah,
Please
yeah,
show us how pretty our wings are first before we start,
yeah,
having a real
yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. If you had, and we got a few minutes left here, I wanted to kind of ask you if you had a particular book that you would recommend that you've read that you might give to somebody you think would be particularly good for investing or otherwise. What might that be?
I have two books that I'd recommend for it. That and in there, neither one of them is about investing. One of them is about what I was talking about earlier about starting to consult as if you already have them as a client.
Mhm.
It's a book. It's called Getting Naked. Forgive the title.
Yeah.
It sounds dirtier than it is, I assure you. It's called Getting Naked. It's by Patrick Lencioni. It's probably about, and that's Lencioni, I think. Patrick Lencioni. Um, and it's a book about acknowledging your flaws and being willing and able to fall on the sword and self-improve, but it also talks about how do you separate yourself from in a competitive consulting situation against companies that invariably are bigger or deeper in their bench strength than your
Sure.
firm is. And I have a small company, so and one of the things is, it's the yellow notepad, sitting down with your client, getting the yellow notepad out and start sketching out what we're going to try and accomplish in this meeting.
Very
So
cool.
that's the first book I would recommend highly, and that could be for anybody that's in business.
I
Um,
I love that. You're not gonna be able to Google it without some nonsense happening. So go straight to Barnes and Noble and type it in, and you'll probably
yeah,
be okay.
yeah,
Patrick Lencioni.
Patrick Lencioni. Yeah, it's
All
called
right,
Getting
gotcha.
Naked, and the other one has also got even a worse title. It's called the No A-hole Rule, and I'll
How come
put
every one of your book titles is terrible, man?
I
I
get it.
gotta.
I get attracted to the title, and then I'm like,
All
oh,
right,
this
right,
isn't
right,
what
right,
I
right.
thought it was going to be. No,
Yeah.
that book, both of those books were recommended to me, so I pass it forward. I'll pay it forward on that, and that's about corporate culture.
Okay.
And so that talks about the really the value of eliminating toxic personalities from your workplace,
Wow.
and how it doesn't, even from a high, if you're in a sales organization and you have a top salesperson who's just killing it, just knocking it out of the park. So, what do organizations do? They tolerate a lot of nonsense from the
Yes.
people who are generating the most revenue. But there is a threshold where the nonsense that they bring, the toxic aspect of that, becomes lopsided. So
Hmm.
it's a diminishing return. And so it talks about eliminating toxic personalities from the workplace, from coworkers and from distribution partners and clients. So,
Wow.
so we actually look at our clients. We do this every year. We go around, we poll our staff, which are the most difficult clients, and we kind of look at them. And every once in a while, just we fire a client because
Wow.
it's just not if it's not going to be a healthy relationship for our staff, if it's hurting our staff, it doesn't matter how much revenue they're bringing us. So
That's amazing. And the name of the book you said was called
the
No
no
A-hole.
a-hole rule, yeah,
All right, the
and
No A-hole.
That's by Dr. Sutton, Sutton.
Well,
So
I love it. And I appreciate you plugging it because a lot of the times when I've gotten these recommendations since doing this show, I'll read the books and I've gotten a lot of great knowledge out of them. And also, I have a little bead of sweat trickling down from my head now because I'm one of your clients and I really don't want to get fired this year. I mean, that's.
you guys are great,
Are we
and
gonna
we
make the
appreciate
cut? All right.
and we appreciate it takes
Yeah.
it takes a lot. We don't the first time, we have great relationships with the vast majority of our clients,
Yeah.
and we don't have a lot of complaints from staff, but every once in a while you hear this client's giving me a hard time for X, Y, and Z reason, and we try and solve the issue. But after 3, 4, 5 years of that, and then they're also not paying their bills, and then they're griping
Yeah.
at us, and they're treating our staff poorly, then just maybe this isn't working out, and you should find somebody else to work with.
I
Is
think that's an
reach.
amazing point. And I think all businesses have to grapple with that challenge. It's like we want all customers and some of the expressions like the customer's always right in these things, but at the end of the day, you have to know when it's going to be counterproductive for your business working
Ab-
with certain people.
Absolutely. Well, I said to you before, and I meant it when I said it. When people ask me what business I'm in, I always say, we're in the relationship business.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
relationships, and if you think about that, they're two-way streets. And,
Mhm.
you know, they we try and do everything we can to nurture and feed those relationships so that they're good, healthy, successful relationships. But, you know, there's a reason why people have break up and why there's
Yeah,
divorces and, why people leave companies. It's because sometimes things just don't work out.
yeah.
And so we try and take that same approach with our with everybody in our business in both directions.
Yep, sounds good. Jason, as we come to a conclusion here, tell me just if there's anything that you will want anybody to know about yourself or integrated pension services that you just think would be important.
Yeah, so I mean, I would tell you that our job here is to fight against, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to, broadly, I know it sounds a little cliche, we're fighting against elderly poverty, but realistically, our goal is to try and create and build as many retirement plans as possible with the idea to try and help as many people as possible to retire successfully.
Mhm.
And successful retirement we define as being able to replace someone's paycheck and when they can no longer work.
Yeah, right.
And so if you're a small business owner and and for us there is no too small. I mean, we work with sole proprietors and we work with companies with as many as 1,000 employees.
Mhm.
Um, and you're not sure whether or you should have a retirement plan or not, or what type of retirement plan you should have. Um, Seek out a firm like Integrated Pension Services that specializes in it. And there are other firms like ours, but we think we're amongst the best that are out there, and we're specialized in retirement, and this is all we do. So, um, and we'll give you the right advice and we'll
Um,
work with whether, and if they have their own financial advisor, their own CPA, and they want us to work with them, we will. Or if they want us to help them in those areas, we can help them in those areas.
it's amazing. Well, we'll put a link along with the show when it airs. But what's the best way to reach you guys?
You could just call us on the phone, or you can just, you can reach, you can find us online at integrated-pension.com, or you can call us on the phone at 978-847-0140. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at jason at integrated-pension.com, or at that phone number at 978-847-0140.
Sounds good. Well, today we talked about a lot of good things. We talked about leveraging your network. I love that. Anybody can use that. If you're a college student coming out, leverage your network. Get out, get to know people, increase your network. And I love the mindset you guys have for your clients. And I can say as a client of you guys is they mean what they say. Integrated Pension Services. You guys have done great work for us. So encourage everybody, get involved, take care of your employees, always do the right thing. Jason, been great having you on the show, my friend.
Oh, this was awesome. I'll do it anytime. Have me back whenever. This is terrific.
Absolutely. Next time we got to talk some sports. We got to break into a whole other
Oh,
field of
that
things.
you're gonna make me talk about the New York Jets and the New York Mets. I'm not sure if we should talk about
Hey, they got my teams beat. I can't even say their names right now, but anyway. Well, Jason, we will catch you soon. And to the fans of Curling Connections, we appreciate you viewing. We'll see you guys next time.